Hello and welcome to a new episode of Under the 128. I'm Alex Moss. Joining me is the grassroots darts guru, Matthew Kiernan. Two questions to start off with. Firstly, how are you doing and who's in charge?
I knew we've peaked too early. I knew that was coming, that question. Who would have thought a clip of Ted Hankey would go viral in the way that it has on Twitter? But there we go. You're in charge, Alex, and double 12, I think, is your preference, isn't it?
It is, yeah, if I can hit the single one anyway. But great to chat to you again. It's been a couple of months. Start of November, we did our last one of these, so lots to catch up on in the last few months. And we'll start with the most recent news that we've had in the world of darts under the 128, and that is with MAD/ADC. MAD, Modern Amateur Darts, is no more. We've got Amateur Darts Circuit ADC taking its place. We'll come on to talk about their launch in a moment, but we'll start off with MAD, looking back on their 12 months involved in the game. What was your overall take on how things went on with them?
Well, yeah, I think it's important to contextualise where we've reached to up to this point. Modern Amateur Darts launched, of course, in lockdown with a big showcase event all about centred on the belts, which is the concept of each area and region and country has a belt holder, and then you could have a money racer type match, challenge match with them for a lot of money. So I think one of the strengths of the last 12 months that MAD have achieved is that those showcase events have been a success by and large, with the exception of a few streaming issues which they had at one or two of the events. Those have been a success. I think you and I are fairly in agreement on the fact that it hasn't quite had the impact that we had hoped in relation to amateur darts. I think obviously, the whole team there are very passionate about grassroots darts and they want to make a success of it, and that's fantastic. So, intentions are absolutely at the best for the game, but it hasn't quite made that impact that we had hoped to see. Obviously, we bang on about ranking tables. The idea was that for MAD, you would have ranking tables for each region, and then if you do well regionally, you would then be able to go into the larger events which they touted and suggested but didn't come to fruition ultimately, which include the Pub to Pro Masters, the Amateur Open, National League Championship where you could represent your region, the MAD Vault, the Golden Gauntlet, which was the Royal Rumble type event, which we, of course, much spoken about and got a lot of attention on social media at the time. Well, none of those events happened. They had an event planned for Chelsea that disappeared. That was quietly cancelled. That was also controversial because it was put on the same weekend as a county weekend. That vanished as well. And so we haven't seen those. So on the whole, it hadn't had the impact that we had hoped. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think that's a fair assessment. And going back to where you started there with the launch, December 2020, during the lockdown that we were in here in the UK, and there was no other darts on that weekend. So there was a lot of attention, a lot of eyes on the launch to see what MAD's plans were. We saw, as you say, all the events that they had planned, the belts as well. We saw the actual belts themselves be defended. We saw live darts take place in a venue. I think there's 4 or 5 games that we saw that night. So there was a lot of people looking at it and saying, is this going to be the future of amateur darts, grassroots darts? And they did have a lot of plans, didn't they? A lot of things that they wanted to try and bring into the game, not just here in the UK, but in other places around the world as well. We're going to come on to talk about Steve Brown, of course, who's the founder of MAD and the new ADC, his statements as well. But he did touch on it as well, that lessons have been learned. It was a lot of plans that they had in place. A lot of them, for the most part, they couldn't do because of the pandemic. They launched during a lockdown, and the first 6 months of 2021 last year, there was not a lot you could do, was there? The pubs weren't open. Not a lot of events were going on aside from what was going on in the PDC. So in that respect, they, you can let them off a little bit. But I think the last 6 months, since July, August time, when restrictions have been lifted and we've seen a lot of opens come back, a lot of leagues come back. I can't really talk for all around the UK, but certainly where I am in East Anglia, there's been a lot more darts come back. But that's not where we've seen MAD really flourish, which is where we thought they would. Once the restrictions are lifted and all these events come back, we'll see the ranking points for MAD. We'll see the rankings come out and we'll see them really start to take off. But that's not been the case. It's kind of felt like they lost their way, really. And maybe this ADC is something that they've had in the background for the last few months, and they've decided to let MAD go with a whimper, I guess, and really take on with this ADC going forward. But I think, lessons should be learned from what they did there, and hopefully we'll see ADC really take off in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings us on nicely to the launch of ADC and our reaction to that. So I think lots of positives, and I think it's important that we start with those. So ADC, much better name. Amateur Darts Circuit is very clever. Why didn't we think of this, Alex? And we could have sold it. We could have made money. That is a very good acronym, and it's a lovely logo. And I think the rebrand is definitely required for all the reasons that you've just said, a fresh start. Another positive, of course, Matt Langan, friend of the show, Darts Atlas. Darts Atlas is the much heralded software solution, which was, touted by MAD in the early days of, how to revolutionize grassroots darts. And using the Darts Atlas system could potentially be part of that. And so that's very exciting. So, and obviously we both know Matt and how passionate he is about darts. And that is a huge positive as well. And, of course, the other element, which is very positive, is that we have seen the launch of this tour. So that's the British tour. Now we'll talk about that in a minute, and the naming of the tour, which caused a few comments. But we have now got these events, which I was very much interested in. An actual tour circuit aimed at big, large events aimed at the amateurs, quote unquote amateurs, en masse, open to everyone, and then you can produce an order of merit, based on that. And that was what I was hoping to see with MAD in 2021, which we didn't. But now that we've got that, I think that is a real positive. And they've already named the prize funds for each. They've named dates. They've booked venues. I mean, all of that takes so much work, and I think we forget that sometimes. So from that perspective, I think there are lots of positives. What did you think?
I think it's a good start. And like you say, it's a fresh new look to start 2022, the new logo, the new name, and these new things that they're bringing in. And like I just touched on with the MAD launch, there was a lot of attention on it. The ADC one, you might be listening to this thinking, what is ADC? Because they did launch during the PDC World Championship. So it might have been lost on some darts fans, some darts listeners who have engrossed in what's going on at Ali Pali over the last few weeks. But I think what they've brought out, they've not brought out as much as they did with the MAD launch. They've tried to keep it as simple and scale back a little bit for now. But I like what they've done with the British Championship Tour. And as you say, we're going to come on to talk about that in a bit more detail. But I think, there is plans to branch it out a little bit further. But it does kind of look similar to what we've got with the JDC. They put on weekends with one or two events, and then you've got the finals towards the end of it, which is what we're going to get with this one. So, I like it. And £1,000 for the winner of each event. You've got £2,000 for the winner of the overall finals. So there's a good pot of money in there. You've also got other things that they're looking to bring in as well. The belts, they've not really said anything about it as far as on social media, but we do know that the belts are going to carry on. It's now going to go under a slightly different format. It's going to be the Undisputed series. So you're going to get 8 live exhibitions taking place throughout 2022. There is still the bids that players have to put forward to try and have a shot at these belts. You have still got Jared Cole as the global champion. You've got James Richardson, Scott Marsh, Gary Stone, Jim Williams. Of course, he's going to have to give up that belt when he takes on his tour card. But you've got players there that are keeping their belts from the MAD system going into the new ADC system. So, there's lots in there to look forward to. And the free membership as well that they're going to offer, because the MAD membership of £5, I think they didn't really get much out of it. So to offer that free membership for this year, I think is a good move as well. And I think they're not going to try and bite off more than they can chew this time around. I think they are going to start slow, work their way, build forward. And I think that is probably the best way.
Yes, totally agree with that. So we should probably come on to the 3 main talking points, because, of course, this is darts and everyone has an opinion. But 3 of the main points where people levied criticism at the announcement that ADC and Steve Brown made. I think the first thing to say is, can you think of anyone that works harder than Steve Brown? Because it strikes me he's got loads of companies, and he's a family man, and we forget he was on the tour. He was on the PDC tour. We completely forget. This is something that's sort of completely forgotten. Also a tour card holder for the last 2 years, and presumably is off to Q School next week in stage 2 to try and regain it. So, I think that certainly needs to be said. The criticism, of course, levied at the fact that the memberships. Well, we all paid a $5. I paid a $5, and our regions still stay, by the way. So I'm still a Titan and you're an Eagle. £5. We all paid £5. What did that actually get us? And that was the criticism levied to say, well, actually, what does that get us? And of course, offering it for free this year, yes, that's fantastic, of course. But what about all the people that did pay a $5 last year? That are those the same people? There's going to be a crossover. They're not all going to cross over, aren't there? There's going to be more people joining for free that didn't pay in last year. So that's the criticism. In response to that, Steve Brown put out the statement, and he says, MAD offered an annual membership of £5, which is very cheap by comparison to other organisations. Nobody could foresee the turbulent year that was ahead of us. The ADC board has recognised many members that didn't see any benefits in 2021 due to the limited opportunities presented by COVID-19. So we unanimously decided we should reward those that have supported us in 2021 and those new players that are joining the revolution for free membership in 2022, with the added bonus of Darts Atlas membership. And regards the early offer in 2021 of discounted Red Dragon products, because that was obviously one of the benefits, of course, that was suggested. And this is something that we are working on with them, and we'll let you know what we agree for this year. Yeah, so that's the membership side. What did you make of the British Tour element of this debate?
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of flack, hasn't there, on social media about all of the events taking place in England, and this being a British tour. I think people wanted to see events take place outside of England as well, take place in Wales, in Scotland, and in Northern Ireland as well would be great. But I think, like I said, I think they are trying to not branch out as quickly as maybe they plan to with MAD. I think what they're trying to do is go to places where they know they are going to get a good uptake in players. And we touched on Matt Langan, who's involved in this ADC, but you've also got to mention another guy who's going to be involved quite heavily in it, and that is Scott Hunt, who we've had on the weekly darts cast. He's the brother of Adam Hunt, one of the professionals on the PDC circuit, but he's involved in Northeast Darts promotions. He's done a lot of good things for Northeast Darts. He's been a successful promoter, and he's got a lot of ideas and plans in place. So you've got an event, one of the weekends taking place in the Northeast. You've also got one taking place in Manchester, and then you've also got a couple of them taking place in Bristol. So I think to begin with, to get events on where they know there's going to be a popular uptake of players is a sensible idea, isn't it? And I think going forward, the plan is for them to branch out in 2023, put events on further afield, and really increase what this tour is going to be. So I think to start off small and work your way up is probably the best way forward for them. So yeah, I can understand there's going to be some disappointment among players that maybe live further away, but I think you've got to look at it with a business hat on, and I think that is what the ADC are going to do. I don't think they're going to try and push things as far as they would have done in the past, which for me, I think is the sensible thing to do.
Also worth mentioning, of course, that the where do the PDC play their Pro Tours? They're not playing them in the devolved nations, are they? Like they used to. So that's again a criticism of the PDC more than anything. And a very good point about Scott Hunt, who did actually message me with regards to venues in the sort of the southern region, of which there aren't many really that are capable of hosting an en masse event that also has a bar and car parking. So these are the logistics that need to be considered. So in relation to the British Tour debate, I had less of a problem with it because obviously we're so desperate for a tour to actually be announced at this stage. Anything is a bonus, and I think that you just have to go with what they've announced and build up from there. as you rightly say. But there were criticisms, especially from those in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and Ireland as well. Response that Steve gave was as follows. He said, all 4 events are in England. Well, let's be honest here. We're a brand new organisation that needs to run as a business. We all know what happens if it's not. Our UK-based team are from England. We have our largest membership in the northeast, northwest and the southwest of England. It's basic maths when dealing with logistics, staff and a safer bet for good numbers in our first year. Our plan is to increase the tour weekends in 2023, move all around Great Britain. Our first year is so important, we can't take chances in potentially hostile territories. Our plan is to increase the tour weekends in 2023 and move all around Great Britain. Our first year is so important, we can't take chances in potentially hostile territories. Not everyone is happy with our existence. So in a nutshell, we've done everything what we had to do for the first year. We'll run amazing events, guarantee our prize money, grow the brand and expand in new territories in 2023. Which brings us on to the final talking point in relation to ADC, and that is that of the women's game. What did you think of this?
This has been another talking point, hasn't it? And that has been that these tour events that the ADC are going to put on, they are going to be a mixed field. You're not going to see a men's event and a ladies event similar to what you'd see in somewhere like a WDF event. So that is something that the ADC have decided to do, and as you're going to touch on in a moment with Steve Brown's response to that, it's, I think, a business decision. Is they want to offer a good prize fund for all the events, but if they're not going to get the uptake in ladies players, then it's unfortunately for them, I don't think they're going to do it. But what we should say is that the ADC, they are going to, as I said, they are going to carry on with the belt system, and they have said plans to introduce ladies belts to it as well. I know that was something that they were planning to do with MAD, which never quite got going, but they've said that they are going to do that when they do get the belts going again with the ADC. So that is something that they are looking to do. I think they're also looking to put on a major event for the ADC for women's players as well, and a couple other bits to touch on as well. It didn't quite make big news from the announcements, but we should say that we have got the 16 regions, and in those 16 regions, every 6 months, the top leading male player and ladies player, they're both going to get £100. And also at the end of the season, the top 2 male players, the top lady player in the national rankings, all going to get free entry to Q School as well. So I think having that mixed field, it is going to be a USP for the ADC to say, come and play in our events here, put your money in for your entry. And, there is going to be opportunities if you do well to pick up a good pot of prize money, and also those opportunities at the end of the season. But as far as growing the ladies game, getting more ladies involved, I think there might be a few question marks with that.
Yes, and it's a shame that those points that you make there in relation to those additional benefits sort of got lost in this sort of flurry of sort of criticism that was levied at the ADC. So just before I read out what Steve says, it's important to say that Dieter Hedman actually replied to this statement that Steve says in relation to the England Open had 2 events, Welsh Open had 2 events, the Isle of Man had 2 events, England Classic had 2 events, and the Scottish Open weekend had 1 event, and that was a £35,000 ladies prize fund. And says, in relation to what I'm about to read out, it's a bit harsh to say that nothing has been done when the EDO has paid out £20,000 per year every year for the last 5 years. So the statement that Steve says is, I'm a big admirer of how far the women's game has come in the last 2 years. Without question, Fallon beating the men has been the Trojan horse. Without doubt, women's darts is the trickiest market to conquer, simply because there isn't a market. Sounds very harsh, but it's the facts. We watched with interest the recent PDC Women's Series and Lakeside qualifiers. The numbers by comparison for the prizes on offer were unfortunately very poor. What's the answer? Where have the failings previously come from? In a perfect world, we'd have equal numbers and equal prize funds, something we can only work towards, but trust me, it's unfortunately a generation away. The ADC received some negative comments because at this moment in time, we don't have the budget for a separate British women's tour. I think the finger need not be pointed at us, but other established organisations. Why is the women's game so far behind? Why is this now our problem? We acknowledge something needs to be done. We're a brand new organisation that has to live within its means. We will cater for the women's game, but please do not lay the blame for inadequate opportunities at our door. Many have been around for decades and have done nothing. Give us a chance. News on a ADC Women's Major in the coming months. There we go. Didn't know where you stood on that. You certainly do now. So, yes, I think on the whole, we are positive. We want all organisations to succeed. And it's just a case of how it goes about that and whether it can cut through and really make an impact with grassroots darts. Time will tell.
We shall see. Looking forward to that. And I should mention as well, we are hoping to get some representation from the ADC on this show coming up. We'll try and get a few interviews for you, one with Matt Langan, and we'll try and get Scott Hunt on the show as well to talk a little bit more in detail about their plans going forward into 2022 with the ADC. So keep an eye out for that in the next few weeks. But let's move on. Let's move on to the WDF. And we should have been watching some darts at Lakeside this afternoon, this bank holiday Monday here in the UK. A lot of people have got it off work, would be watching that to whet our appetite for the final of the PDC World Championship tonight. But unfortunately, as we found out a couple of weeks ago, the WDF World Championship for 2022 has been postponed, pushed back from the start of January to the start of April. What was your thoughts on the news when it was postponed?
Well, I think there was a lot of, inverted commas, conspiracy theorists in relation to, is it actually related to low ticket sales rather than COVID? In fairness, I think there's a lot of credence in that, because ticket sales were low as far as we can gather, which is a real shame, because I predicted on the last episode they would be absolutely fine. So that's come to bite me, hasn't it? But I think if ticket sales are low, then that's a real problem. And how on earth are they going to increase that between now and April? Well, hopefully they will be able to do that. Certainly, as we speak, over the last couple of weeks, well, we've all been expecting an announcement from Boris. Further restrictions are coming in for England. Well, we haven't had that. We're still in Plan B at the moment. So, if it was COVID related, it was sort of preempting that really. And we saw a lot of cancellations for a lot of things as a result of bloody Omicron. So yeah, so it's a very difficult one. I sway towards it being related to ticket sales. I just hope that they can increase the number of bums on seats. It does also, of course, it does solve that argument of, well, what are the finalists going to do? In relation to Q School, there was a big debate about that. Well, that's solved now. And then, of course, it creates another argument, which is, what happens if the people that have qualified for Lakeside get a tour card?
It's going to be a minefield, isn't it? Coming up in the next few weeks, you've got Q School starting, well, at the end of this week when we're talking on Sunday, it gets underway. As you say, it would have been the same day as the finals day of the WDF World Championship. That is not a clash anymore. And we said on the Weekly Darts Cast, we weren't really concerned about there being a clash between the PDC World Championship and the first few days of the WDF one. But what we were concerned about was that clash between the first day of Q School and the finals day of the Lakeside, because there is that crossover of players that want to go to Q School, get that tour card, but also want to play at the Lakeside as well. And okay, there's not going to be a clash when we get to April. It's looking pretty good actually as far as the calendar when you compare it to the PDC events. I think there's going to be a lot more eyes on it than there would have been in the first few days of the event if it was in January compared to April. But the Q School clash is still there because you've got, as you say, a lot of players, men and ladies, that are going to be going to Q School looking to try and get that tour card. And once you have that tour card, you won't be playing at Lakeside. So it is going to be a very interesting week or couple of weeks coming up for the WDF to see how many players that they've got in their field get the tour cards and then have to withdraw from the event. And then how do you fill those gaps? We don't know how many gaps there's going to be. There might not be any, but we're pretty sure there's going to be a few. And do you go down the rankings and work your way up? They've already done the draw, of course, for the event. So it is going to look different. How different, only time will tell. But as far as postponing the event, it was a huge disappointment, and not just for fans that were planning to go to the event, had things booked up. Players, of course, the organisation themselves, is a huge blow for them. But we'll see how it plays out in April time. Not having that clash, having it pretty much clear for that 9 days, apart from I think a Premier League on the Thursday night, could be a blessing in disguise, and it could be the way forward for them. They have this April slot where they've got nothing else on in the darting calendar, and they got a lot more eyes on it. But yeah, like you say, with the ticket sales, I think there's around 15%. I saw a number doing the rounds on social media. I don't know how true that was, but yeah, once we get Q School out the way, we know the field again for the event. They are really going to have to push things for the next few months to get those tickets sold and really fill up the Lakeside, because you don't want to get to April time having already postponed it and still having a lot of empty seats there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a social media paid for campaign may well help with the advertising for that. And I guess looking ahead to 2022, I guess the WDF's plans will be to try and get as many events in as possible, especially the ones that were sort of postponed and we missed out on last year. I know you've written about the World Masters. I'm sure we'll talk about that, and the World Open in Essen, because I think those big tournaments in the Netherlands be really, really successful. Let's just hope that they can happen. I think the WDF's done very well, really, in terms of their, the participation is still very high in those events, and they've done well at communicating news in relation to that, and their rankings are up to date within moments of the tournament happening. So that's fantastic. I think the one last point I would make in relation to the postponement, however, is that Justin Thompson left a comment on Facebook in relation to this, and that question marks remain about how this decision was arrived at and how it was communicated to the players, because Justin Thompson left a comment and said that he is £2,500 down pre-Christmas, and the comment that he made was that, well, clearly conversations were being had. Why wasn't this communicated to us that was a potential possibility before click the book button? So that just brings it home, doesn't it? £2,500, my goodness.
Yeah, that's a big wad of money to lose out on, especially before Christmas as well, and having to rebook those flights, accommodation and everything for the rearrangement. That is going to put him out of pocket as well. So hopefully something can be sorted with that and he can be able to come over and play in the event. But 2022 for the WDF, it has got to be the year that it takes off, I think, and it's easy to say that now, given where we are in the world right now. Things can change on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, so we don't really know where we're going to be in a few months' time. But you'd hope that when we get to the end of this year, we will have seen a World Championship, we will have seen a World Masters, and the tour will really be taken off. And that's not just the WDF, that's the ADC, that's all the organisations that we've got along with the PDC and darts, because it's been a tough couple of years. You go back this time 2 years ago, we were at the O2 at the Indigo, and we felt that would be the last BDO World Championship. We knew that the WDF had plans that they were looking to put out to take over these big events. Because of the pandemic, they've not been able to do it yet. But yeah, fingers crossed this will be the year that we see it happen. And I guess moving on to the PDC, a lot goes on with the PDC outside of the main tour, the tour card holders, and we'll start off with the Women's Series, an announcement that we've had since we've spoken, and that is the extension of the Women's Series. We talked a little bit about ladies darts with the ADC, but let's bring it on to the PDC. We've gone from 12 events in 2021. We're going to get 20 events in 2022, 5 different weekends. What was your reaction when you saw the news?
It was a really pleasant surprise, wasn't it? It was very surprising. And this is something that certainly I, and I know a lot of other people have been calling for years, do something for women's darts, please, PDC. And so, we do have, Fallon and Lisa, very much to thank for realising that actually there is a market there. But lest we forget that, since obviously, Anastasia had a go in sort of the late noughties with some success. But after that, there was a decade of very little, attention paid to women's darts by the PDC, more on the cheerleaders and the walk-on girls. Let's not go there. So it's great news, and I just hope that they get the numbers, because again it feeds into that debate that Steve Brown was discussing that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. The uptake in numbers is going to be very interesting to follow this year, but also the darts as well. We saw with the Women's Series last year, it was great to see a lot of different ladies on the stream. We didn't just see, it wasn't just the Fallon Sherrick, Lisa Ashton show. It was towards the end of events. They were hoovering most of them up. Makuru Suzuki picked up one of them, but those two won all the other ones. But you've got 20 events this year. You've got 2 weekends in Barnsley, 2 weekends in Wigan. You've got 1 weekend in Hildesheim in Germany. So interesting to see how many of the ladies head over to Germany to play in that one. Of course, we remember 2021's Germany one was cancelled. Hopefully things will be a little bit better this time round with the pandemic situation, and a lot more will be able to travel over there. And we'll see a lot more from Germany ladies players get involved in that, and players from around Europe as well. But yeah, going up to 20 events, I've got to be honest, I didn't see it happening from having the 12 in 2021. I thought they might go similar this year, but it does show that the PDC have got an interest in the ladies game. They are interested in putting more money into the ladies game with their own women's series and getting more involved. And I know there's been a little bit of talk about how this develops going forward, because there's now 20 events. Do we see the lady that finishes top of the list at the end of it get a tour card? We see it with the development tour. We see it with the challenge tour. They're 24 events a year now. So it is getting similar to that level of events. Do we see a lady now get a tour card via the women's series? That's still up for debate. We don't know about that. But also, do we see a women's world championship from the PDC going forward? All these things we don't know the answers to yet. But what we do know is that the PDC are putting more money into the ladies game. And as you say, it's an area of darts that has been underfunded, underinvested for a very long time. But to see the PDC, the top organisation in darts, put on more events for the ladies, I think you can only say it's a good thing.
Yeah, just to come back on a couple of those points. In relation to the tour card aspect, obviously we know that the PDC will do anything in their power to get either Lisa or Fallon back on, especially the latter, onto the tour full time. We know this. I mean, come on. Maybe the clue is what we've seen in snooker, because there are 2 women on the snooker tour, which is obviously also Matchroom, which is the PDC is also under that banner, and they were given them because they were the 2 best performing female snooker players there. So that would hint the fact that is the way it's going to go. In relation to the World Championship, I would love to see that. Absolutely love to see it. And I think it would be very popular. However, I mean, I appreciate Barry Hearn is no longer, head honcho of the BDC. He has been on the Weekly Dartscast before. And the quote he gave you was, Ewan Burton, was, we're not going to do a World Championship for those who could comb their hair with a side parting. Yeah. That would suggest that isn't going to happen, unfortunately.
We shall see. Well, we talk about the PDC's calendar announcement for 2022. We've also got the dates for the Challenge Tour, the Development Tour for this year now, and we've gone back, haven't we? Last year we had it split between UK and Europe because of the travel restrictions. This year it's back to 1 tour for each of them. So we've got 5 weekends for the Challenge Tour, 5 weekends for the Development Tour, 2 weekends of those in Germany, 3 of them in England. What was your take on that announcement? Are you happy that it's gone back to a single tour?
Well, in relation to that's a good question. In terms of the development tour, I think that you will always get good entry numbers for both of these tours, because obviously people want to play PDC darts, especially those on the lower tier trying to chase and get onto that professional tier. You'll always get good numbers regardless of where it's held. The problem, of course, is logistics. And in terms of the what we've seen in the past, not in terms of the development tour necessarily, because those generally finish at a reasonable hour, because remember, it's 2 events in a day. And if you have the challenge tour, you could potentially have anything up to about 600 to 700 players that are eligible to play in a challenge tour. And that first challenge tour batch, of course, is so after Q score is so crucial, because if you do well in that, it could potentially set you up for the rest of the year, because you'll be used as a top up all of in 2021. Obviously, they were used as top ups from Q score, weren't they? But in previous years, challenge tour top ups, for that first weekend, if you did well, you could get into half of the pro tours off the back of that, which is an interesting element. Unfortunately, the fact that it's gone to a single tour means that the second event of your day, it could finish at midnight, 11:30. I think Jitsi van der Waal won one at about 11:30 on a Sunday. That's insane. People at the criticised Riley's, and perhaps rightly so, for how late their tournament's finished. Well, what about the poor officials? What about never mind the players and how they're going to get home? What about all the guys that are there still marking? I've done a bit of marking, and it's pretty grueling work, and if it's still going that late in the hour, it's not good for anyone, is it? So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that. And before I pass over to you on your thoughts on this, it's my favourite subject, Alex. What's the prize money going to be for the Challenge Tour and Development Tour? It's been the same for 7 years. When is it going to go up? That's my question.
I mean, I'd love to know the answer to that as well. I think it is due an increase in prize fund, but 24 events this year, and for the Challenge Tour, at least for the first time. I know I said last year we had it split between the UK and Europe, but this will be the first time that we've had a single Challenge Tour go out to Germany. So all those players from the UK heading out to Germany, which I think is something that we were looking to see happen for a long time. All the Challenge Tour events were happening in England. We wanted to see it progress like the Development Tour and head out to Germany. And like you say, I think now is probably the time to up that prize fund with the Challenge Tour, given that there is going to be a bit more travelling for the players involved, and a lot of the players we see in the Challenge Tour are based in the UK. So hopefully that is something that we do see happen. But it's going to be a big weekend, that first one, 21st to the 23rd of January, 5 events, and then the next one after that isn't until April. So you think of all the Pro Tour events that we get in February and March time, all those Players' Championships. It's a huge weekend for players that miss out on Q School, do well in that weekend. And like you say, it does set you up for those next few months at least to get on the Pro Tour and test yourself against the best players and play for a bit more prize money as well. But I like the way that they've gone back to the one tour for each one. I think it is probably the right move. As we say, we don't know how travel restrictions are going to be for 2022, but as things stand, hopefully they're going to be okay. And I like the move as well that they've got 2 events Friday, 2 events Saturday, and just the 1 event on Sunday. As you say, it is a grueling weekend for the players, for the markers, everyone involved, to have all those events on, and particularly with the amount of entries as we're going back to the one tour for each one. But to have that early finish on a Sunday, I think is good for the players. They are going to be able to get away and maybe spend their Sunday evening at home if they do live close.
It's a fair point. And of course, this, talking about these en masse PDC events, it brings us on to our favourite time of the year. I mean, maybe we get too excited about it, Alex, in fairness, but it is exciting for those nerds amongst us, and it is, of course, Q School. I imagine we'll probably get record numbers, even with the bubble in the European version. What do you reckon, 1,000? I reckon they'll get 1,000 in total across both. So firstly, to plug our diary feature, which we'd like to run, we'd like to hear from anyone that's actually going to Q School to take part in our diary feature, which in layman's terms means a Zoom with me in the evenings. Who wouldn't want that? Well, I hope I can see them running for the hills. But yes, it'll be great to have anyone that's interested in this. It would be great to have you involved regardless of your ability, because I think the wonderful thing that we forget about Q School is that there are 1,000 different stories to tell. Everyone's got a different reason for being there, regardless of whether you think they should be there or not, which obviously is the debate which rises every year on social media. I think it is interesting. We've had a few people come back to us, which is great. Very appreciative of that. So if anyone else is interested, do let us know. But are you looking forward to Q School, Alex? I presume you've got your entry in.
Not this year, but just touching on what you said at the end there with the diary feature, that was great stuff from you last year, chatting to one of our good friends of the show, Connor Scott, a few times during that week at Q School. So yeah, just echoing what you said there, if there is anyone listening that would like to get involved in that, would like to have a bit more exposure, if you like, you're going to be on the show a few times that week, whether you're playing in the first stage or the second stage, do get in touch with us. And we should say as well, you said about the stories as well. We had 2 great stories last year, didn't we? We put out a Q School Ever Present special with Ashley Holgate. You spoke to him and I spoke to Ian Lever. They are the 2 Ever Presents at Q School. They've played in every single one, and they had 2 great stories to tell as well. So yeah, lots of great stories. And it is probably my favourite episodes of the year coming off Q School, when we are fortunate to chat to a few of the players that do get their tour cards. And remember chatting to Danny Baggish and Gordon Mathers and Scott Mitchell, Jack Main, a few players there. And the previous year, Aaron Beanie, I'm not going to forget that one in a hurry. So there's always some great stories to come out of it. I don't think you could argue, as far as a darts event where you're not actually seeing the darts going the board, probably the most exciting event of the year. Dart Connect gets huge numbers. I can't imagine how many numbers they get for that week. We spoke to the darts referee, Jack, on our last show, the weekly darts cast. He's going to be heading out there and he's going to be doing some filming as well, giving us a bit of an insight into how things are as a player as well. So keep an eye out for that on YouTube, his YouTube channel. But yeah, looking forward to Q School getting underway and seeing which players come through and which players are going to get those tour cards.
And who do you think is going to go through, Alex? No, that's not.
Ooh, I'll give you 30 names.
Oh, God. Well, I think that's what we could all look forward to now in relation to the lists of predictions from everyone, because everyone gets really into it, don't they? But, I mean, it's a full, and to quote Andrew Sinclair of Inside the WDF podcast, which people should listen to, it's a fool's errand. Because, it is a lottery, as we know. So this brings us on to a subject which sort of goes under the radar, doesn't it? Because normally this time of year I'm gearing up to go to Riley's for the UK Open qualifiers, which are, which were getting record numbers pre regularly seeing 150 to 200 people in each event. It would get criticism because it would go on for a while, and sometimes some of the events is pretty much potluck. Some of the events we run really well, certainly the ones I've been to run very well, and others in other venues not so much. So that was an issue. But obviously there is massive interest in this because the videos that I've done of the finals and people qualifying from Riley's for the UK Open remain some of the most successful stuff that I've produced. Last year, there were no amateur qualifiers, as we know, because of what. They just PDC just picked the next 8 or next 16 eligible players off the various Q School lists they used, wasn't it? I think it was. It was Challenge Tour and Development Tour, wasn't it? Yes, of course. Will we see the return of these? And do the PDC care, Alex?
It's a great question, and one that I'd like to put to Matt Porter. Hopefully we're going to get him on at some point early this year. Hopefully we'll get him on before the UK Open. So we don't know the answer to that question yet, and we can find out from him. But yeah, I'd love to see it come back. And as you say, we couldn't see it last year because of the virus. Having hundreds of people in a room playing darts just wasn't going to happen in February, March time last year. But this year, I think we are hopeful that those things can happen still. But it's who's going to put them on, because we know that Riley's have had some tough times recently. Are they going to be able to put these events on? We did talk about MAD potentially taking over the reins and putting these events on, but obviously now they've had their brand changed. They've just changed to the ADC. Is it a bit too early to give them that responsibility, perhaps? So maybe we won't see it this year. Maybe we'll see the PDC top up with players from their own tournaments and events that they've put on, which, when you go 2 years without it, then you kind of, some people start to forget about it, don't they? But I mean, us fans of the game will remember that the main one, of course, is Rob Cross, 2016. He was in bed. I think it was a Sunday morning. His uncle woke him up and said, "You're going to Riley's Norwich today. I've just heard that Alex Moss hasn't entered this one, so you can go to it." No, not really. But he went to that qualifier. He won the qualifier. He got to the UK Open and got through a few rounds. Ended up playing Michael Van Gogh on the main stage at Minehead and decided to get that gave him the bug to play darts more properly. Played the Challenge Tour, won the Challenge Tour, and he's done pretty well since then. He's become a 4-hit wonder. He's won the world title, the world match play, a few other major titles as well. And if we hadn't had these Riley's qualifiers, would we have ever seen Rob Cross? I don't think we would. I think it was that qualifier getting to the UK Open which gave him that hunger to pursue a career in the game. So that's something that if we don't see come back, we're going to miss out on. And is that something that we see every year? We see a Rob Cross? No, we don't, but we do see it happen. So I'd love to see it come back, not just to see those potential things happen, but just for any player to have the opportunity one day to enter a qualifier and you get into a PDC major event on TV is something special. I think something that darts needs to keep. So hopefully if we don't see it back this year, I know time's ticking, but if we don't see it back this year, hopefully things will be in place and we can see it back next year.
Just a point on Rob Cross there. So 20 months, I think it was 20 months after He played in the UK Open as an amateur qualifier against Michael van Gerwen. He's playing Michael van Gerwen in the semi-finals of the World Championship, which he then won in that match. I mean, I always say this, and we forget about this, of course. We will never see what Rob Cross achieved again. I just genuinely think that it was so mental what he achieved to go from that to world champion in that small amount of time. I just can't see anyone ever emulating that. And the other thing I think I'd say about amateur qualifiers, in relation to obviously we did the Riley's lockdown challenge that kept me going throughout the sort of the first wave of this the pandemic. And I think the thing that always shines through is players. It really does mean the world to them to qualify and get through. They're really hard tournaments to win for a start. To get there and be on, to be mixing it with the best is obviously what they're dreaming of, and they bring all their friends and family down to Butlins Minehead. What a treat to then be in that en masse room, boards 3 to 8, or even on the main stage, or even on stage 2. To experience that is just sort of for them is the once in a lifetime type thing, or gives you the bug to then go on and do what Rob Cross did shortly after. So, and of course Barry Lynn being the most famous Riley's qualifier as well. So I mean, hopefully they come back. And just an idea for the ADC, write to them and say, we've got this tour. Take the top 16 from that. It's I appreciate it's a lot harder than that, obviously, isn't it? Because trying to get them to listen. I suspect, and I fear the worst. I fear they may never come back. I hope I'm wrong, but I think they'll just use top ups from their own tours, and that'll be that. Which I think is a real shame, but hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, hopefully you are wrong. Well, we'll finish up the show with a look back on 2021 and a look ahead to 2022. And starting with a look back, 2021, that was the year that we saw grassroots darts return, leagues, opens, other events. Let's pick out our personal darts highlights of 2021, getting back playing the game that we love.
Yeah, well, I think just being back at local opens again was really nice, really. Did various. You can look at me on YouTube and see the ones that I managed to get. So it's a bit of Croydon, Basingstoke, back at Walton. These are all the sort of the local clubs that are near to me. I went to a county game for the first time. Actually, I'm ashamed to say it's taken me that long to get there. So that was another new experience. Just over the Christmas period, managed to stream from a venue for the first time. So that was a highlight. And yeah, I think just returning to normality has been very good. And of course, the real highlights was I get to say I've played darts at Lakeside.
Yes, it's been great to see those events come back, and particularly with yourself, Matthew. You've been providing us with some interviews, content for the weekly darts cast ever since we started. So, and it's been a great staple of the show as well to have your interviews from different opens, different events, play them on the show and hear from some players that we've not heard from before, some players that of course we have. Rob Cross, you spoke to this year as well. We even dropped in the Rob Cross appreciation minute for him, which was really nice to see. But yeah, it's been great to have them interviews come back for us on the show this year, or last year now, as we're now into 2022. For me, like you, really, just being back out there playing has been great, because I've been playing for my pub team since I was, just before I turned 16, so when I was 15. So it's been a little while. I won't give away how many years, but it's been a little while, and I've played for the same team ever since. So to see those people again that I didn't see for 18 months was really nice. And we've had a pretty good season actually so far in our league. On a Wednesday night, we're third in the league with a few games to go, so we've done better than we thought we would. We thought we'd be challenging for the bottom spot and try not to get relegated, but we've had a good season. We've had some good nights, beating some good teams as well. I've had a few highlights. I'm not the best player in the team, but I've had a few good checkouts, a 1-2-1 on the ball, another 100 checkout, tops 82 on the ball. So I've had my moments as well, which is always nice, and they're the moments which keep you coming back every week. You have a poor week, but you come back the next week and you have a good week. So they're the things that keep you coming back. But yeah, like you say, just to be back playing the game has been nice. And really looking ahead to 2022, I put some things that I want to see happen in darts in 2022 on the Weekly Dartscast website. But Matthew, give you the floor now. What is your darts wish list for 2022?
Well, I think we want the ADC to take off. I think that would be good, whatever form that takes. And I think, the common thread for all of these organisations, we want them to succeed and we want participation numbers to increase. And, and all organisations have a role to play in that, including UKDA, of course, who we haven't really spoken about. But, what UKDA do is continues to go well. And, of course, they've got their Magic Weekend, which is another big event, which we hope is a success. It's new. So I guess it's just for the wider side of things, it's seeing these new events go well. And on a personal level, I did note that you put in your very good article on the Weekly Dartscast website that you wanted to play me. Yes, that we've been promising to do that for ages, haven't we? So yes, absolutely, we want to make sure that happens. And then off air, we're going to see whether it's logistically possible for us to get to the UK Open, not as players, to be clear, spoiler alert, but to potentially see that first session. I think that would be really good because it's worth the 320-mile round trip, but to get to that first session because it is so special. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to see them things happen. Just starting with, as you say, the potential of a Moss versus Kiernan game would be great to see. A Moss v Sinclair game as well. That's what we're hoping to see at Lakeside. Probably not on the main stage, but in a working man's club a few minutes down the road. But yeah, definitely this year, want to try and get an in-person game with you would be great. If that's an open, or if I come to your ends and we find a pub to have a game of darts, I think that would be great. So yeah, hopefully we'll see that. Like you say, with the ADC, we'd love to see that really take off this year. I was going to put on my wish list about the MAD rankings appearing, but now it's going to be about the ADC rankings appearing, and I think they've put the rankings will start from the 29th of January. So we've got a few weeks of, I guess, more announcements, more plans being put in place before the events start to come, the local opens, when the rankings, the ranking points will be available for them. So hopefully we'll see that sooner rather than later. We touched on the UK Open, the amateurs coming back. I don't know if we'll see that or not. A woman coming through Q School again, that's what I'd like to see. Not just one, two. Let's see Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick both get those tour cards and see both of them battle against the world's best week in, week out. Would be nice to see. But yeah, lots to look forward to this year. I think hopefully it will be a year not as 2021 was better than 2020 at least, but hopefully 2022 will be even better than 2021, and we'll see a lot more darts played, we'll see a lot more events, and we'll see the WDF majors take off, we'll see the ADC take off, and we'll see who's the better dart player, me or you, Matthew.
That's the question that our listeners are really asking, aren't they? But yes, no, it has been it's an exciting year ahead. It can't be any worse, surely, than what we went through at the start of this time last year.
Well, Matthew, it's always a great pleasure to catch up with you. I know it's been a long time since our last one, a couple of months since we did this. So thanks for being available again, and we'll continue this show into 2022. Try and make it a monthly thing if we can. So we'll try and get together again in a month's time and look back on all things that have happened in January. Look back at Q School, see which players have got their tour cards, and the first weekend of the Challenge Tour, see which players are doing well, and look ahead to what else is to come. So for me, Alex Moss, for Matthew Kiernan, thanks very much for joining us. And until next time, enjoy the darts.